Hi, my name is Everett Hollander. I am a partner with Billy Clark Creative Management. We work as strategic advisors and in talent acquisition for creative companies in art, architecture, design, fashion, and hospitality. I'm based in New York City. We have offices in LA and Paris as well. And I am 38 years old. Um, Very early in my career, I studied architecture. I received a Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Texas at Austin and thought that I would be an architect. But I graduated in 2010, and that was probably the very lowest point after the 2008 recession, layoffs that had happened world and industry wide. And I was not in a position to work for free. So I ended up pivoting very early in my career. I worked in hospitality. In fact, I was a bellhop at the Standard Hotel to start, and quickly found my way back into architecture with my first job at Rex as someone who was on the business side, helping grow the operations, do business development, and uh, orchestrate everything required in order to run a successful design architecture practice behind the scenes. Shortly thereafter, I joined Bjarke Ingels in New York as Big was launching its New York office, where I was the managing director and eventually group COO, responsible for, well, at the time were Big's 5 offices around the globe. Similarly, my purview was everything that was not design and architecture related, but what was required to run the business. 4 years ago, I joined my now business partners who were primarily focused in talent acquisition, recruiting, and the art, architecture, design spaces. And with my addition, we've expanded the scope of what we do to advise our clients not only on talent and not only on things that are people related, but anything to do with the running of their creative practices. So, question one, since leaving college university, how have you defined success in your career path? And has that definition changed over time? Yes, it has. And I don't think I actually defined what success meant for me when I was a relatively young college graduate. But certainly to the extent I had a notion of what success should be, it was external and what I thought that I probably wanted to do in order to succeed. Um, and as I mentioned, my dreams were pretty quickly shot because I was not able to find a job as an architect when I graduated. And that probably would have been my chief success criteria at that point in time. And what was interesting about pivoting to a totally different industry is that I learned how to experience life and have fun, which was frankly something I didn't do very much of when I was in college. I was working hard, as I'm sure many of you understand deeply. And I also gained exposure to many worlds in which I didn't know existed. And therefore, at that time, success to me meant exposure to culture and people. The Standard Hotel at that time had just opened, and it felt like what was the center of the sort of cultural world at that time between Hollywood, art, and other creatives. Um, but I also knew that wasn't long for me. My career for many, many years was driven by a deep aspiration to succeed and do well, associate myself with really important, impactful, and in many ways, very highly regarded work. But it was still driven externally. And it wasn't really until at least 10 years into my professional career that I stopped for the first time to ask myself the question, what does success actually mean to me? And what I've always known about my experience without articulating it is I value the people and the relationships in my work. And I knew that intimately in scaling big from a very small, scrappy group of architects to 250 just in our New York office at the time. And I could see in order to build teams, assemble fee proposals, and convince potential clients to work with us that our people, the talent on those teams, were actually the most important thing. And so now success for me really has to do with my relationships with people. Do I have a meaningful relationship with the people that I interact with on a daily basis? And can I have an impact so small as to perhaps only affect one person, but in a true, deep, meaningful way? And that's what drives everything that I do now. When I work with my clients, I'm oftentimes advising on their businesses, but because they are relatively small, for the most part, founder driven creative practices, I'm as much getting to know the people who are running those businesses as I am the businesses themselves. Question 4. What do you do that distinguishes you from your peers, and how long did it take to figure that out? Well, I was trained as an architect and I thought I would be one. So I had the privilege of a design thinking education, which to this day I still think is one of the most valuable assets that I have in doing what I do, advising creatives on their business strategy and operations. Um, my experience working at Big and prior to that Rex also provided me deep insight into how practices work and also how they can work differently. And so I don't necessarily think I'm the very best in the world at what I do, but I found a niche and an overlap where my um, strategic business thinking and operational experience overlapped with my ability to understand, appreciate, and build business practices around creatives has become my sort of superpower. And how long did it take me to figure that out? Well, I don't know that I had a point in time where I flipped a switch or had some aha moment. But I will actually speak to my greatest mentor, uh, who is Sheila Sogard, still and previously was the CEO of Big, who brought that same approach to running and scaling a business and a creative business at that. So it always sort of struck me as normal that that's the way that things should work. And of course, in my time, I've had exposure and experience to others who do what I do, in many ways informed why I do what I do, how I do it, with a very deep human approach. Because that's not always necessarily the way. And in many cases, it might not even be the best way for other types of businesses. But I found for me that it was. Question 5. Where would you like your chosen profession to develop in the next 50 years? I would like for there to be greater public visibility and appreciation for architecture and design en masse. And what I mean by that is there is an enormous amount of value creation that architects and the full design teams in general are responsible for creating and contributing to. And it always strikes me when I hear an anecdote of a real estate broker making a commission that is sometimes greater than the architect's fee for the entire project. And it's in no means to minimize the importance that a broker may have had in the sale of a property, but it certainly doesn't necessarily speak to the years of work and the degree of complexity required to coordinate the construction of a building. And I think that this is um, something that we as architects could learn from other industries um, with respect to cooperation from within the industry, establishing clear standards, but also a question of visibility and making architecture approachable not only so that people can see the value in the end product, but to understand that the complexity invested into the development of architecture is, in fact, valuable. And that comes down to also making it digestible, because as professionals, we have deep expertise in a particular area that, of course, others don't. So finding ways to make architecture and the practice of architecture um, more accessible, more visible, more meaningful to the public at large is something that I would like to see within the industry, because I would like to see for architects to receive what I think their fair share of value creation is. And in turn, I think that would have a large impact on not only the way that work itself is performed, but the people who are doing the work are compensated as a direct reflection of whatever sort of additional value architects en masse can capture from what it is that they do. Question 8. What do you enjoy most about what you do, and what do you enjoy least? As I alluded to, I enjoy working with people the most. In my practice, my work is bifurcated in to the advisory that I have with my clients, which is very personal and oftentimes frequent. So I'm speaking with my clients regularly enough where it's not just about business. In many cases, it's about how things beyond the realm of their business impact what it is that they do. The other part of my business is in recruiting and talent acquisition. So I also have the opportunity to support the very same clients with building their teams, and in part then speaking with the selection of individuals who they may be considering. Um, what I've learned from that is that everyone has an interesting career story. Some think about it like that and have honed their story in such a way that they can tell it in a compelling fashion and moderate it according to their audience. And that everyone has that superpower that oftentimes just may require finding the right place to deploy it. Um, I'm not sure I have a least favorite thing about what I do. And this also goes back to something I briefly mentioned. I worked hard at defining what I thought were a really clear set of personal success criteria and values, and made changes to my career in order to pursue those. And of course, work sometimes is not always fun, or exactly what it is that you want to do. But on the whole, I enjoy everything about my work. And I'm sorry I can't answer that question fully. Question 13. How much did you make in your first job? Did you feel you were paid fairly, and any negotiating tips? So I chose to answer this because of my deep exposure and experience in recruiting, but also because my very first job was as a bellhop. And on one hand, that was humiliating as an architecture student to enter the workforce with high hopes of becoming an architect, and very quickly realize that I needed a job and I needed to earn some money. Um, and I would take something entirely outside of my profession in order to do that. My first income was, I believe, $15 an hour, which doesn't sound like not a lot, and it wasn't. However, I earned tips, and it struck me shortly after I had started to earn that I, as a bellhop, was making multiples more than my friends who were working in architecture jobs. And that planted that seed that I just mentioned about value creation within the industry, and really recognizing the amount of not only work, but true value that architects create for the world, and how today, and certainly when I entered the workforce 15 years ago, I didn't feel like that was necessarily the case. And that's what inspired me to ultimately take a job and try to sit on the business side of architecture and see how things happen behind the scenes. Um, I do think that in negotiating, it's important to understand two things. The first is that negotiations should not be performances, but it really ought to be about understanding and, to your best ability, putting yourself in the shoes of whoever is on the other side of the table. Because there's usually always a win-win situation where you can get what you want by proving the benefit or value of whatever it is that you want to your negotiating partner so that they can get the same. I have learned the long and hard way. I've postured in many negotiations early in my career, thinking that I needed to dig my heels in and get exactly what I wanted, without necessarily considering the perspective of um, my negotiating partner, in many cases, my clients. Because the second really key learning is being truly willing to leverage what you have in a situation if you are unable to negotiate for what you want, and that's walking away. It's saying no. And I was never willing to do that, but I postured as if I was. So truly using that power and sometimes saying no to opportunities, negotiations that are unable to meet your requirements is, in fact, the most powerful thing you can do. Because sometimes you will find that's what's required in order to move a conversation along, and other times you won't. The negotiation itself will end, but you will be better off for having not entered into an agreement that doesn't suit your purposes. And if there's a sort of bonus answer to that, um, I participated in a program a few years ago that unfortunately no longer exists called the Alt MBA. And it was a very intense, short, um, non-professional program designed for professionals who are looking to level up in their careers, designed by Seth Godin, who is sort of business mind and author. And one thing that I learned there, one of many things that I learned, was not only the power of no, but the power of silence. That sometimes saying nothing at all is the best thing that you can say. So, um, I will end on that note and say thank you, Phil, for the invitation, and to you all. I'm really looking forward to meeting in person and having an opportunity to expand on any of this and contribute to this course in whatever way it goes. So we will do that soon. Thank you again, and bye for now.